The Jimmy Z Show.
All right, once again on the Jimmy Z Show, I'm very happy to have Scott Wilson. He is the president of the Connecticut Citizens Defense League. Scott, welcome once again to the Jimmy Z Show.
Thank you, Jimmy. It's great to be back on your show.
Well, you know, things in Connecticut are very fluid, and I'm very happy to have you back on because it seems like every couple of weeks the texture of what's happening in Connecticut in terms of firearms is changing.
Well, right. We're now faced with this. There's a widely circulated letter that shows the intent of the state police to try to rein in any individuals that had a firearm that they were trying to register prior to the or after the January 1st deadline. So individuals did send in their registration forms late, and they have faced with this letter that is circulated all over the internet, which essentially has the positions of the state police and what you must do at that point to comply with the law.
Right, and one of the options is not registering the firearm. The options are getting rid of the firearm in one way or the other.
Correct.
Now, one of the things that we talked about off the air is that one option that a Connecticut citizen has would be to get the firearm out of the state, and if somebody simply puts their rifle in a case and puts it in the trunk and takes off in the car to go across state lines and, you know, drop off the gun with a family member or something, that to me sounds like a risk right there.
It is a risk, you know, because now the firearm is not stationary inside your domicile. It's now on the road, and, you know, if you could get into an accident or there's a number of, or just a routine traffic stop, a taillight out, something along those lines, then you're now transporting an assault weapon that is considered contraband and illegal, illegal in the eyes of the law.
Well, where does this letter notice for the law enforcement to be attempting to get a hold of these guns that were attempted to be registered? Where does this letter come up in terms of people who did not register their firearms? Connecticut really doesn't know who has all these guns, do they?
Well, no. Other than, well, yes and no. There's certainly an element of probabilities in there, and I'll get into that in a second. But first off, the individuals that did send their registration forms and declaration forms in late, they are known now to be in non-compliance with the law.
Right.
So some of the individuals sent in some declaration forms for magazines, others for registration forms for so-called assault weapons. These individuals are more than likely going to get one of these letters, and they're, again, given the choices that are listed, rendering it inoperable and the like, they are known persons. Now, individuals that did not register, since Connecticut has had de facto registration for close to 20 years, what can happen is the police can cross-reference that database versus the authorizations that have gone on through federally licensed dealers and look and see what types of firearms were purchased, and then they'll have a sum total underneath that line of persons registered versus the persons not registered, and they will see an indeterminable amount of firearms or indeterminable amount at this time, and those persons could, not necessarily are, but could be in possession of firearms that are now banned. Those firearms, and the reason I say could is those firearms could have been transferred out of state, sold privately prior to the passage of the law. They could have been rendered inoperable. They could be anywhere. They could have been gifted to other persons. So is that enough for police to want to start going around and knocking on doors? I really don't know. I would certainly hope not.
Now, it seems to me that, well, let me ask you this. In terms of a gun store or an outdoor store that's selling guns, have they been required for a period of time to keep records of who buys guns?
They haven't been required to do it, but what they do is they contact the Connecticut State, the DESPP, or formerly the DSP, Department of DPS, and they give them an authorization number for all the transactions of firearms, and they've been maintaining those records and keeping them in a database. So they know for the most part, unless you bought something privately, they know they've got a pretty good idea of who has what, or at least who had what at some time.
And it sounds to me like Connecticut, since January 1st, they're playing hardball now.
Yes, they don't seem to be offering too much in the will of or in the mindset of bending towards making things any easier. They are determined to follow the law and not reconsider any of the positions or not reconsider any of the unintended consequences that are now coming clear as a result of the law's passage. I look at the way that this law was passed and how it was passed through the emergency certification, and I look at, just to look back real quick on how this was a twofold opportunity for the state legislature and the governor of the state. Again, this governor has been a failure here in the state. The state legislature has been a failure for a number of years in the state. Businesses are leaving. Individuals that are producers are leaving. Good people that have had enough are leaving the state right now. So it gave them an opportunity to impose more gun control, and at the same time, it gave them convenient cover for their failures in other areas such as the economics of the state.
Could you talk briefly about the one extension that was offered after January 1st? It was very short term, but I think people need to understand that there was a circumstance where Connecticut found that they were offering a short extension.
Right. In order to give the benefit of the doubt with the January 1 deadline, some of the post offices in Connecticut did close early on New Year's Eve. So those individuals that tried to go to the post office just assumed that all the post offices were closed because this one was closed or that one was closed.
Sure.
So to give the benefit of the doubt, they let people anything that was postmarked by January 4th, as long as the notary signature was stamped by the before the 1st on the 12/31 or before, they accepted those and grandfathered those applications and let them in.
And generally, what was happening if somebody decided on January 15th, January 20th, February 1st to go ahead and try and register their firearm?
What would happen?
I mean, was it just outright denial, or what was the state's reaction?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, they're right. I'm sure those people are going to get those denial letters that the state police have admitted to having drafted now. Lieutenant Paul Vance for the DSP has gone on record and stated that yes, that was indeed a letter that was sent or prepared to be sent by them. It is a legitimate letter, and Eric Cook's signature is on it. So they're ready to send those out. Now, any person that has contacted me after January 1 and asked what they should do, and I've received numerous contacts from individuals, I have told them to, it might not be in their best interest to implicate themselves by sending in the registration forms, after the fact, and that they need to consider what their options are, and cause they're not going to allow them to register, at least as of
and maybe even talk to a lawyer about this.
That's an option I've given some of the people. But other options are, again, take that risk to try to get them out of states. That's entirely on them. Saw the firearms in half, or however you want to render them inoperable permanently. That's the other option. And or if you really want to turn them in, you can do so. But I certainly wouldn't give any law enforcement the satisfaction.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I also wanted to talk about amnesty. Was there is there any serious talk of amnesty now in the state capitol?
I've been asked and approached by a couple of the legislators in our state what my feelings were on that, and of course that was even prior to the January 1 deadline. If they could get a year extension, and I think that it's something worth considering, and I don't say this because I'm trying to just necessarily give people a second chance who didn't register willfully,
right,
to go comply with the law. But what I'm saying is that there are still people out there that are going to find out that their 15-round magazine is banned, or they're going to find out that their Kel-Tec Sub 2000 is now banned, or something that they really never thought, that really they never would consider would be something that they would purchase legally is now illegal. Again, just to restate that, there are individuals that don't watch the news, they don't follow politics, they've really turned an ear away from all this stuff because they're trying to live their lives and pay their bills and go to work and raise families and stuff.
Sure.
For these people that don't know about the law, it might at least be worth considering having some type of extension period and with that, extension, I think there would be a serious amount of responsibility to fall on the state of Connecticut to either put up some billboards across the state, putting some notices up in some gun shops or notices where you buy ammunition, someplace, because I don't feel that they ever did anywhere near enough to notify people about the law.
You know, I've read some articles from some bloggers, and some people are understandably very concerned about the possibility of bloodshed. And one thing that I try to do on my show is stay away from conspiracy theories, but I want to be factual. And so my question for you is, when I was talking with a friend of mine at breakfast over the weekend, and we talked about this specific thing, and it's my belief that at some point it should be possible for a judge to step in and maybe put a stay of the execution of this law, so that calmer heads can come together and discuss what's happening here before they start arresting Connecticut citizens for a law that many of them don't even understand
or know about.
Yeah. Is this something that's possible?
Well, I suppose it's possible. You know, our attorney that's involved in our lawsuit right now originally tried to get a stay of the law, and it was just Judge Alfred Cavello, the federal judge, was not going to allow it at that time. Would there be some reconsideration at some point, or would somebody else take up the cause and try to request something along those lines? I don't know. I mean, that's a very good question, Jimmy. I would certainly hope that cooler heads would prevail regardless. I mean, we have our cities here. Three cities in this state are extremely dangerous with all kinds of crime, and our police either aren't doing enough or haven't been given the resources enough to go into those areas and deal with real shootings and real crime. But for them being the state police or the state of Connecticut to all of a sudden have this zeal to be able to go door to door, if that were to happen, I can't see it. But you know, the police are, some of the police anyways, are likely to follow the orders that they're given, and
it doesn't make any sense, does it? And especially when you're talking about crime-ridden neighborhoods where people use their firearms to defend themselves.
Well, correct.
Okay, look, for the people who are living in Connecticut and they want to get involved, they want to get in touch with the Connecticut Citizens Defense League, how do they do it?
Well, our website is ccdl.us. Come visit us and subscribe to our blog and join up. Membership is free. Some of the things that we're looking for right now is the fact that we are now entering the appellate level of our lawsuit with other plaintiffs against the state of Connecticut. Is if you want to drop a couple dollars donation or something for a donation in there towards our litigation effort, we'd appreciate it. Of course, we understand times are tough for most people, and it's not always feasible. So, if anything, keep us in your hopes and your prayers if you believe in any way, shape, or form in prayer. And
absolutely
keeping a watchful eye on us, because as I've said in other venues, that every state in any state could possibly be one Sandy Hook type of tragedy away from having something like this happen to them.
Sure. Absolutely. So it's the Connecticut Citizens Defense League, ccdl.us, and I want to appeal to my listeners all over the country. Connecticut is on the front line right now in the battle for gun rights, the right to bear arms, and if you can send $5, $10, $15, it's a big help. If you can send more, I think that's great. Are those donations? They're probably not tax deductible, are they?
Right, they're not tax deductible. And if I could just throw in real quick, Jimmy,
sure,
that we are hosting a rally at our Capitol in Hartford on April 5th. We have a featured speaker coming, and that's David Codrea. I'm sure you know the name.
Mm-hmm.
And he will be with us and many other speakers. And from what it sounds like right now, all the support we're getting from around the state, other states, from individuals saying they're going to stand with Connecticut, we may have a great turnout from a lot of other states. So we're looking forward to seeing some new faces coming from outside our region as well.
Okay, that's April 5th. What time do you expect that to begin?
It's April 5th, noon to 3 p.m., and you can find more information on our website about that. Carry is allowed if you've got a Connecticut pistol permit on the Capitol grounds.
All right, and that's April 5th at the state capitol. It's the Connecticut Citizens Defense League, and once again, Scott, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. Appreciate it.
The Jimmy Z Show.